Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Satu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage.
I love your earrings.
Thank you.
To everybody watching, Michelle is wearing the most beautiful Yoda earrings. Did you bead those?
No, there is a young Two-Spirit up in Fort McMurray, and he is Métis, identifies as Métis, has wonderful regalia, and he gave them to me.
Gorgeous.
Because he is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I don't remember. I have them tagged on Facebook or on Insta.
Okay, we'll put it across the...
Yeah, no, they're really wonderful people, actually.
Wow.
And, just really kind to me about it. So I was just like, awesome. So yeah, and everyone knows I love Star Wars. I'm wearing my Darth Vader
I saw.
Sweater because, yeah.
Bless you.
Well, I'm right at that age where I get really hot.
Okay.
So I have to, wear tank tops, and then when I get chilled, then I have to put on a sweater. Yeah, it's fun.
So there was a lady named Polly Waterfall, and she said her name was Helistes, and she said she was having her own private summer. When she was going through menopause, she was having her own private summer. We'd come to work, and the windows would be wide open. You could see your breath.
Yep.
And she'd be
hot
walking around.
I seen this video. It was a black woman, and she was bald,
Yes.
and she was at the football game, and she had steam coming off of her.
Yes.
And she's like, everyone needs to see this, because it really can be like that. And so, I've been running around dusting and cleaning and thinking, okay, I'm going to be ready. And then so I get really, really hot, and I'm like, oh my God. So I've been in a tank top sweating. Feel like I'm in my own personal sweat lately.
Every round is the warrior round.
Right?
Right? Well, Michelle, thanks for having me. Why did you start this podcast?
Yeah, so I started in 2018. And what happened was I kept telling my husband, I'm like, and then this happened today, and then this happened today. And he just put a mic in front of me, and he said, start talking. And it's because we don't have real representation on media, on news. I would argue there's not a single decision that should be made in this country without Indigenous input for of the territory of that area. And so I was just kind of tired of it. And I was feeling empowered at the time too. Well, this is, you say the simplest thing and it changes everybody. So for example, this weekend everybody was super excited about Taylor Swift having a land acknowledgement, and I'm like, this is literally the girlfriend of somebody who's playing with the Chiefs. And we have all of those folks down south that are in that area saying, that's a racist name. And, so I was just trying to point out that the land acknowledgement is kind of like the standard for the arena. Mm-hmm. This isn't a big, she's an ally of ours, because, obviously if she was, maybe the Chiefs would not be the right terminology we would be using for a football club. So I tried to point that out, and obviously that upsets the settlers, and which is fine. I think it's important though to kind of point out the simplest things, and they may lose their mind, but I know it's shifting the conversation. And a lot of people have said things like, you're an influencer, and
Wait, do people send you things for free? Because that's the only... I would love to be an influencer for the new Star Wars Micro Universe collection from Jazzwares.
Oh my God,
and I've actually written to them.
Yeah.
Saying, just so you don't have a Canadian influencer, send me the stuff. I've got 32 friends on MySpace. I mean, I think I got some juice here in the community.
Sure.
The MySpace community.
Yeah.
They never call me back.
Darn
it. I gave them my fax number, my pager.
They didn't, hey? It's so funny too, because my biggest worry always is I don't want to be so cringy that I upset my daughter. So I kind of will bounce a few things off of them, like, hey, if I did this. And then she's like, oh my God, my friends are following you now. And I'm just like, ooh, with great power comes great responsibility.
Big responsibility. Yeah. To whom, there's a good saying, I think about it all the time, to whom much is given, much is expected.
Yes, and so, and I've had some really good scoldings by good people. So I'll give you an example. There's a local Cree woman, fantastic woman, always helping youth. And she said, Michelle, smarten up. I need you to start representing yourself. If you're going to be taking that mic, if you're going to be on a stage, you need to smarten up, because like I would show up in just my jeans or a sweatpants and just say, you know, a whole bunch of things and then go. And then she was like, you need to wear your ribbon skirt, blah, 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 blah. And then I started to do that, but then I also started to realize, like, but I am, like, especially after the accusation of being a pretend Indian, I'm like, no, I'm Yellowknife Dene, and I usually wear my jacket now where I go to be like, I'm Yellowknife Dene. That's who I am, and to be proud of who I am and such. So I grew up not proud of who I was. It took me a long time to be proud. And then once I understood the policies and I could articulate it, then I became obnoxiously proud. And I'm okay with that.
Good for you.
Yeah, so that's why I started the podcast. And then, and you know, Darcy and I were lucky enough, we had the means to do that. He was doing that already with our friend who was talking about sobriety and recovery and the road to that. And, you know, it's interesting because even though he's a white fellow, we talk a lot about religious trauma being the root of usually the addiction. So it's been really wonderful. He's worked on his, you know, anti-racism, recently came out as bisexual. So, like, he's really safer to be around compared to most people, and that's why I really like him. So, yeah.
Who are we talking about? Darcy who?
My husband.
Darcy.
Yes, my
your
husband.
Moose. That's his name?
Oh, my goodness.
Is that your husband's name? I just shook his hand.
Yeah.
He's Mr. Gorgeous.
Yeah,
I thought he was
know. He's so cute.
too much man for this planet.
Oh, my gosh.
How does he handle it?
I know. My daughter was taking pictures because we have all the photo albums of his cute little dimples.
Yeah.
And but no one believes because he has a beard. So he was super easy to fall in love with. Actually, we met in grade 4 and 5, and I fell in love with him then.
Wow.
And then he broke my heart in the sandbox, and then I didn't talk to him again until I was 16.
And then you were back.
Then we were back.
Then you could breathe again.
Yeah.
Your heart could breathe again.
100%. So yeah, we've been together for a long, long time, and we grew up in a small town, a white settler, a small town of Sylvan Lake, and we've seen a lot of our friends, you know, unfortunately have breakups, and I know it's always for the best when people do, and so we've been very blessed to grow together, grow up together too as well, and you know, I'm going through this, learning what ADHD and autism is, and unpacking that so that I can hopefully do better as we move forward. So, yeah, it's been a lot, and he's like been with me. He's witnessed decades of racism and sexism that I've experienced, and that's why he encourages me all the time to still take that mic and still talk, and you know, because sometimes I feel like, should I keep doing this? But especially for the youth, you know, trying to make sure that they speak up and know that they can, and man, do they. Another great scolding I got was from Two-Spirit Youth, teaching me, because I used to say LGBTQ2, and then they were like, no, we were here first. You say 2 first. So I'm like, okay, so now I'm in the habit of saying 2 as LGBTQ2. You know? Yeah, because I'm like, you're right? So, and that's what I tell other people too. And then I also call it racism in the queer community, because like those calls to justice, those are queer centered. So the fact that you don't have like non-Indigenous queer community advocating for the 231 calls to justice, I'm like, what is going on here? How are we here in this time of reconciliation? So, you know, I'm always trying to point out the obvious that I think is obvious.
Yes.
Because I'm Native, but they don't always see it. So, because they're like, that's for them. And it's like, no. it's all about racism. It's all about this. It's all about colonialism. Like, this helps the black community. This helps every community. Come on, let's be on the same page.
I can't thank you enough for inviting me into your home.
I can't thank you enough for reaching out. I can't thank you enough for those 2 books.
Okay.
So for folks who don't know, I actually love horror. I have my Ravenloft collection downstairs. I obviously read the Twilight series. I was nursing my child at the time, so I just like powered through them because like you're up at ridiculous times. So yeah, that's what I did there. I used to read the Sookie Stackhouse collection. Oh my God, I love that. I love the True Blood TV show that went with it because it was slightly different, but still great. Like they were both fantastic. So obviously Stephen King, one of my first books I ever remember reading. I did read Flowers in the Attic in that series, and it like probably too young.
We were always the world. There's
Yeah.
no proper age you can read that series.
No.
It's just so scandalous.
Yeah, no, it was wild. So I was reading that, and then I really got into Anita Blake Vampire Hunter, but then I really got into porn, and I'm like, I'm not really here for the porn. I'm here for the killing the zombies. So, like,
What series are you actually talking about right now?
well, it was the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series.
And it's very erotic?
Yeah, no, it
know
gets
that,
like
okay.
really erotic, and
That's
like,
why everybody was reading it in high school.
oh my God, the first couple of books were like really like we are killing zombies, we are killing vampires. I'm like, I'm down for this. I grew up watching Blade. I'm like, I'm down for this. Let's watch
And then
killing.
books 3 and 4 were like, well, we might as well have some fun.
Yeah, no,
While
like,
we're
okay.
in between.
Like, and to be fair, the first book is Guilty Pleasures, which is literally a male strip club, but there wasn't all the porn stuff there.
Okay.
It was just like laying the foundation. So
Okay.
yeah.
Good to know. Now I understand why everybody was reading it, because I was like, oh, wow, okay, wow, you're really into this series. Good for you.
Very spicy.
Okay. Very spicy. Bridgerton season 1 apparently was very spicy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, everybody on our street in Edmonton, all the moms were watching it, and they'd get together and huddle at pickup. And apparently season 2,
Oh my gosh.
there was a dry spell. People were just like, God, what's going on with this? And then I think they shook it up and said, look, we've got to get back to the basics.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently season 3, you just hang in there. We're back, baby.
Oh my
Whatever
gosh.
that means. I never watched it.
One of my favorite things to watch on TV is Ghosts. And they have this lady.
Ghosts?
Yeah, she died in the Victorian era, and she found out the power of a washing machine that shakes. Oh my God, I was so embarrassed for her. But it's so funny because it's a comedy, right? Like,
Okay.
it's so funny. So, and they do have a person that's from that area too. So I think it's set in like New York. And basically, if a ghost dies on the property, whether it was like the first native, whether it was a Victorian great grandmother, whatever, they're all kind of there, having forced to live together. And there's a Viking, so it's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing.
So it's called the series, because everyone's going to Google this.
Yeah,
Okay, on what platform? Is it on Prime? Is it on HBO Max?
I would see it on Prime. I
And it's
think
called
on Prime.
Ghost?
Ghosts. Yeah, it's a comedy. It's
Okay.
a comedy.
Okay, and it's a series.
Yep, I think they're on season 4 now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
it's
to know. Because everybody
so
I know
good.
is looking for something. Like, come on.
Yeah.
They're like, what are you watching? Penguin's over. Penguin's over.
Yeah.
The new Yellowstone has started.
Yeah, yeah.
But people are just scrambling for the new thing. So maybe it's Ghost.
Yeah, no, it's so funny.
Okay.
I love it.
Well,
But I love it because I don't know about you, but I've always had like bump-ins with ghosts and
Wow.
spirits, and so like I've always had that, unfortunately. So
Why unfortunately?
yeah, well, when I was
What do I feel like Howard Stern right now? Okay,
I
why
know.
unfortunately?
When I was little, I was like, I'm crazy, and everybody thinks natives are crazy, and so I just kept it to myself, and I wouldn't say anything. And then when I became an adult, and I talked to my husband, and obviously there's so many ghost stories in the world, I'm like, I don't know why I'm so embarrassed about this, but I think it was rooted in internalized racism. I think that's what it was. So, but now that I'm way older and I understand, we're praying to our ancestors, and we're praying to those spirits, and they're always around us. Now it makes sense. Everything's fine.
So, Michelle, when you
Yeah.
were a kid, you saw
Yeah.
spirits all the time?
Yeah.
Would you wake up and they'd be standing at the foot of your bed, or
No,
how
you
would
just
you see
feel them. You know how?
But
like,
would you see them?
I've never. Well, no, that's not true.
Out of the
I've
corner
seen
of your
a couple
eye.
of things, yeah, and but my husband and my daughter can like see them, or at least my daughter could once upon a time, and we were standing right there. So I'm pointing kind of at the base of my steps, and my father-in-law had just passed, and I had a different big dog at the time, and for whatever reason, that big dog and my father-in-law, even though they were both amazing, they just like could sense the fear of each other. So he would start like barking so much up the stairs, and his hair would be standing, and Samantha would be in my arms, giggling and laughing, and I'm like, "Who are you laughing with?" And at the time we had a picture of him right there, and she would point right at it,
Oh, wow.
and go, and I'd be like, "This
Wow.
totally makes sense." I know it totally makes
I
sense.
felt that.
And so I would just talk to him. I'd be like, "Ernie, I'm so glad you're here to like make Sam happy." And then Mason, my dog at the time, he would just be done. He'd go lay down, and I knew he was gone. But you could feel it, like you could feel the goosebumps, right? Like, or the skin, like the hair, like you could feel it.
Yeah.
And just before Sam was born, there was a few ghostly things that had happened, and I was like, "Fine, I'm not an atheist anymore. I'm agnostic." And then once I had a really bad birth, and I had to go to the elders and unpack, because it was systemic racism that I experienced in the hospital, but I didn't understand it, because I was the good little Indian that wasn't like the others, right? Like that's what my white family said to me all the time. So when I experienced systemic racism at the hospital, I'm like, I need to figure out who I am and what I'm all about here. And so I did, and then I started to unpack my spirituality, and it was Casey Eagle Speaker is one of the elders in this area, and he was the one who really mentored me and taught me, like, you have to put down tobacco, you have to start praying, you have to start smudging. And what I found was that amazing coincidences would happen after I would do that. So I knew there was a lot more to it, and respectfully understand that our ancestors are with us. And do you ever remember Garth Brooks sing that song Unanswered Prayers? He had a song of unanswered prayers, and how he wasn't meant to be with someone, and how that was the best unanswered prayer because he's with her, and they have a wonderful family, etc.
I actually just heard that song. I didn't know that was the name of the title. I was pulling into the garage in Edmonton, and I turned off the car, but I kept that song on.
Yeah.
And I remember it was one of those things where it was on FM, and you don't know the title. And I was like, I can't believe this is Garth Brooks. This is like Garth Brooks is amazing, great singer.
Yeah.
But I just thank you for telling me about that, because I just remember in the garage going, this is immaculate.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Why don't we like?
I don't
everyone's
even like
the
country.
dance. Everybody loves the dance.
Yeah.
But unanswered prayers, I think there's a lot of people listening and go, wow, that's the story of my life.
Yeah, no.
Thank God I didn't end up with so and so. Thank God I didn't take that job. Thank God I didn't,
100%.
Yeah, wow.
Right. Like such a good song. So like that, and that's what I think about a lot. Where you think you want something, but it's not meant to be.
Creator
right?
knows more. Yeah.
And your ancestors know better too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I'm just grateful for all those things, and I just think, well, that was what was meant to be, and I really made peace with a lot of things with that.
I think also as you get older, I'm 53 now, you start to understand that it actually all had to happen.
Yeah.
All the failures, all the train wrecks,
Lessons.
all these chapters of your life, it all had to happen. And, I was just talking to my dear friend Gary Godfredson. He just turned 70. I called him on his birthday a couple days ago. And he told me years ago, he goes, Richard, you think you know what love is? Wait till you hold your first grandbaby.
Oh.
Then it all makes sense, Rich. He says, anything after grandbabies, it's all gravy. And I look forward to that day. I was just talking to a bunch of friends last night. We're all 53.
Yeah.
We're having supper. And my dear friend Marco de Hogue, great writer here in Calgary, dear friend, my adopted brother, he just said, I don't know about you guys, I'm 53 and I've never been happier. I said, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Because I'm so grateful. I've never been more grateful to be a father, to be a husband, to be a son, to be a brother, to be a friend, to be in a position to help other writers and storytellers and actors and models to be a cheerleader for others. It is the greatest privilege. It
100%.
really is.
And that's what the other thing that I don't understand is like lateral violence, because you do well, and all of our friends in the area are doing well, and Casey's doing well, and my daughter's doing well. Like, we all do well when one of us does well. Like, I don't understand lateral violence.
Unless, okay, let's talk about that.
Sure.
I was told a long time ago that every time you succeed,
Yeah.
so whether that's marrying the love of your life,
Yeah.
whether that's getting the dream job, whether that's scoring that book deal, or getting that acting opportunity with the series that really takes off, or fill in the blank, fill in the blank, fill in the blank.
Sure.
Every time you succeed, you're holding up a mirror for others.
Yeah.
And it's showing people, well, I'm doing what I was born to do.
Yeah.
I've never been happy. I've never been grateful. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, when you hold up that mirror, a lot of people, not a lot of people, some people aren't happy with their reflection.
No, that's fair.
And they know, I married wrong.
Sure.
I cheated on my wife.
Whatever it is, yeah.
I'm not doing what I was supposed to do. I have regrets. I hate that person because you reminded me of what I could have been and where I should be right now.
Sure.
And that, you can't control that. You can't extinguish your own flame. You have to continue on your path and share your light and be a light for others when you can. And when the chips are down and you're hurting, take the light that you need from other people who are reminding you that we're all here to work.
Yeah.
You know? And if I could just say, you know, when I graduated from high school in 1989, and then I had to go back and do 3 more courses for my matriculation, in 1990, after I did receive my, high school diploma, I decided not to go to college or university, and I decided to take a year off, and I decided that I was going to volunteer and be the handy bus driver in our community.
Nice.
And I always say to everybody, if you're watching this and you're feeling lost and you're lonesome and you're looking for strength, volunteer. Yeah. Volunteer. Be of service, because I thought I knew my culture in Fort Smith as a Dene, as a Clecho Dene, as a Fort Smither, as a son of Denendeh. And what I learned was I was starving for culture. I was starving for fellowship. I was starving to be baptized by my very own elders. I was starving to be tattooed in spirit and soul and heart as a Dene.
Yeah.
And it was elders like Seraphine Evans, Amelia Gaytrix, Dora Toronjo, Maria Brown, Irene Sanderson, and Fort Smith. Like, these matriarchs could see how pitiful I was and how homely I was.
Yeah.
And how lost I was.
Sure.
And I think they got together at some point, maybe telepathically in their own divine way, and said, this guy really needs help.
Yeah.
The Creator didn't give him a whole lot to work with. Why don't we take him under our wings and let him hear our stories and our traditions and our culture and our teachings. And thank God I recorded them. In 1991, I bought a little $23 tape recorder from Radio Shack.
Nice.
And you can go on Richard Van Camp's SoundCloud and you can listen to those recordings. They're the worst recordings in human history, because I didn't know you have to unplug the fridge. Sure. I didn't know you got to get the dog to stop barking in the backyard. But with their permission, I started to record these wonderful matriarchs, and it's the greatest thing. I used the beginning of the lockdown when COVID first came to Canada to start digitizing them and sending them to family, and to say, this is your great auntie in 1991 telling a story about how a spirit saved a baby from drowning, and here are the photos I took in 1991. Here are here are the portraits I took. And that, I think, is how I found my way as a human being moving forward. Yeah. And it those elders, their teachings, their traditions helped me certainly be a better human being, a better husband, better father, a better son, better brother, a better human being. And I'm just here to say, we're living in a time of incredible loneliness. Yeah. And I think that there's so many elders out there that are just waiting for someone with a good heart to show up and spend time with them. I mean that. Yep. I genuinely mean that, and I know that. Yep. Yeah. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Oh, that's amazing.
I would in a heartbeat. Yep, loved it.
One of the things I loved about the 2 books that you gave me to read, which I loved both of them, at the end,
Thank you.
you did actually name elders and knowledge keepers that helped guide you, and I loved that because there were teachings in there that I was really embarrassed. I'm like, I didn't know fireweed is our like tobacco.
Tobacco, yeah.
And I felt so much better when I had read at the end that you were like, I didn't know either. And I'm like, oh, thank God, it's so embarrassing.
Well, it's not embarrassing. It's just we
just weren't taught.
It was withheld, and
Yeah.
it was Chloe Dragon who in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, when I was working on Beast,
Yeah.
the novel, who stood up and made that announcement that they were handing out fireweed instead of tobacco because that was traditionally how we used to how we used to pay the land, you know, honor the spirits, pay the water. And I went up to her after and I wrote to her and I just said, you know, can I please use that in my novel? And she said, absolutely, yeah, go ahead, go for it. It changed everything for me. And then, you know, Terry Naskin, Tlicho elder, who I just saw last week here in Edmonton, got to give her a copy of Beast. She told us about the Yabiti, the Tlicho protectors.
Yep.
I never grew up hearing that. And I said to this council of elders last week, we need to bring back that word, Yabati.
Yeah.
Protector, warrior for the people, protector. Like, why don't our own Tlicho youth know that? And I was just so grateful that we have that recording of her talking about the Yabati. And now, of course, it's in the novel, and I acknowledge her. And, you know, Rosa Mantla, who I just got to interview a couple days ago about the Tlicho-Chipewyan peace treaty, how that was negotiated between Akecho and Edzo. I got to interview Chief Fred Sangris, Yellowknife Dene, and he shared with us about the Tlicho, you know, Chipewyan peace treaty. All the research, I've never researched anything harder, and I think that anybody
amazing.
who's working on anything huge right now, never be afraid to go to those who know. So I got to go to my auntie Eileen Beaver and ask her how would this conversation go in Dene Sutlane and Dene Detlane. And that's why at the end when Slitter, the terrifying part is the monster knows Chipewyan. That's the most terrifying part of all. That shows you how ancient this thing is.
Yeah.
But to have that in official Dene Detlane from Eileen Beaver means the world to me. And to have real Tlicho used throughout the novel, in the names, in the dialogue, makes me so proud. And I think you're only stronger when you have cultural consultants. So anybody who's working on anything right now, go to those who know, ask for their help, pay them very well, honor them with gifts, and honor them with the book, honor them in your acknowledgments. And because now, if anybody ever says, well, who are you to write about, you know, the Tlicho Chipewyan peace treaty, you're from Fort Smith. I can say, well, I'm actually so glad you asked, because and you can go to Terry Naskin and Rosa Mantla and Tony Rebeska and Eileen Beaver, and you'll see that they've all been acknowledged, they've all been honored, they've all been paid. We've really done a great job here. And here's the best part. If you don't like Beast or Wheetago War or ROTH for whatever reason, use it as soul ammunition and do what you think would be even better. Add it to. 100%. We're not in competition here.
And that's how I feel about podcasting too. I'm like, the more voices, the better. Yeah. The same reason. But kind of, I wanted to acknowledge what you're saying about elders and consulting, because when I told my child, I was driving home from school and saying, hey, guess what? I just finished that book, and at the end, they blah, 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 and it just went off. And they were like, really? So, like, I got to buy, like, 20 copies of Beast, and I got to give it out to everybody that I know, because it just feels so right.
Thank you.
And, like, it's fun. I think folks who really love Stranger Things will love Beast.
Thank you.
Because it's so much fun like that. And then you were talking about your SoundCloud. First of all, I have to subscribe to that one. I first subscribed.
It's free. There's nothing to subscribe to.
I know, but you know how it comes up. And then you were showing me in the back of Beast, there's a little QR code where you get to have the, I think it's Spotify or SoundCloud. I
think it's Spotify. Isn't it Sherry's mixtape?
Yes. You get to actually have the mixtape that was like basically said throughout this entire novel, and I loved that because well, one, it's all my favorite 80s songs, but two, like you make reference in them all throughout the book, and then it's so much fun to like, and here it is. I was reading it thinking I have to do this, and then I finally read at the back, oh, you did it. It's already done.
Well, that's the power of Douglas and McIntyre. So let's just talk about Beast for a second. So
Sure.
So I really want to acknowledge Stephen King, the greatest horror writer of our time, in my opinion. So, growing up in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, aren't you glad you and I were raised before the internet?
Yeah, because I was
we use it
out
every day,
the library
all day,
all
every
the
day.
time.
Yeah.
And that's where I got all of my Stephen
But
King novels first.
We had a childhood.
Yep.
We were outside.
Yeah.
We had culture.
Yep.
You know, in Fort Smith, we had back to the land camps, whether it was winter camp or summer camp out at Sioux Lake or Salt River or Pine Lake. I was in Beavers. I was in Venturers. My mom worked for the Friendship Center, Uncle Gabe's Friendship Center. She knew how important land and culture and the right teachers and right instructors were. We were in the bush all the time. And we used to drive our snowmobiles to high school. I mean, that's how small town we were. But we were accountable. Yeah. So if we messed up in or out or around town, we would get in trouble by the elders or the adults who witnessed our stupidity.
Sure.
And our parents knew about it. So not only would we get in trouble out on site, we knew trouble was waiting for us at home, right?
Yeah.
We were accountable all the time, and we knew that. So to be outside all the time and to be not afraid of the elements, to be out in winter with the right gear, to be with the right people, such good friends, I look back and I say, how lucky were we? Out in the bush all the time, you know, out on the water, you know, gun safety, boat safety, plant identification, berry identification, like acknowledging like stars, you know, all this wisdom up there, all these teachings, right?
Yeah.
So what I love about growing up was I think I read more because we didn't have the internet. And I remember as a teenager, and this is serious, I would go to bed early. What a dream teenager I was. Like, I need to go to bed early because I need to read 200 pages tonight of Stephen King.
Yeah.
I would ration it to 200 pages a night, and
Nice.
I couldn't get enough. So I remember I was
Same.
just saying, you know, I'm still scared of Andy, I think it's Dufresne, from Christine.
Yeah.
And I read that book, I mean, I'm 53, I mean, do the math, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm still scared of him
Yeah.
because I have met several Andy Dufresnes
Since.
I know the second I see him. And I remember in Firestarter,
Yep.
the headaches that Dad would get, I would get.
Yeah.
And if a book's giving you migraines, I mean, the writer's obviously doing something right. So I feel that Beast, which is set in 1986,
Yep.
it's set in the fictional community of Fort Summer NWT. And the reason I do that is so everyone can just let their guard down and go, wait a minute, he's making fun of my family. Or, oh, wait a minute, he's making fun of our chief. Or, oh, what's going on with it? You know, you can't do that. I want people just to be able to relax, enjoy the show. This isn't about anybody in particular.
Yeah.
So it's about three teenagers. We've got Lawson Soren, who is Tlicho Dene, and he is a Yabati, a protector of the treaty.
He's such a good kid.
Well, he's a little too good.
Yes.
He's a little too good. So
Such a good kid.
So typical teenager. He's told, look, you're a direct descendant of Edzo, a great Tlicho chief. You need to protect the treaty. You're not to raise your voice or your hands against another Chipewyan, and that's because of the war, the tribal warfare that happened, that haunts this land forever with what happened. He doesn't believe it. Yeah. And he meets a Cree grass dancer, Isaiah Valentine, who's gorgeous, like your husband, like your Nietzsche Moose. and then there's Sherry Burns, who's Métis and psychic.
Yes.
And they have to team up and face an ancient spirit that's been called into existence from the spirit world, from the small town bully Silver Cranes, who's Chipewyan. And what I love about the book was, you know, when The Lesser Blessed came out in 1986, my editor was Barbara Pulling. 30 years later, the editor for Beast was Barbara Pulling. Yeah. She was the first editor, and then she did the first major edit, and then D&M paid for 5 more editors.
Wow.
After Barbara, because when Beast was submitted it was over 400 pages.
Oh,
For the young adult market we want, it has to be 300.
okay.
And we cut, and every editor kept making more suggestions to really hone the story.
Yep.
And for the market, we don't have any swears.
Yep.
There's no
Hanky-panky.
hanky-panky.
Yeah, there's a little like insinuation of it.
There's insinuation.
And like that teen lust in the sense that he blushes a lot, which
Yeah.
I thought, like, and that's why I loved it because.
There's an innocence to it.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what we wanted.
Yeah.
Right? So we really wanted the Stranger Things. When you read the first Twilight, right?
Yeah.
It's all about the attraction, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what we wanted. So I feel like Beast really pays homage to Stephen King. It's really a celebration of innocence under attack. And once again, it's up to the Indigenous people to save planet Earth. Because this spirit wants the planet. And that's the best part of it. And what I loved about reading Stephen King was, I remember, like, you'd be in it and I'd look up and I go, how on earth are they ever going to get out of this? How are they going to? There's no
solution.
There's no way.
Yeah.
Everybody dies. He should have called it Everybody Dies at the end or halfway through.
Sure.
And I hope that at some point somebody somewhere in a small community, a hamlet, says, how are they ever going to get out of this? There's no possible way. They're outnumbered. They're cornered. There's something called Slitter.
Yeah.
Right? And it's terrifying. And anyways, I'm excited. The book is out. It's new. I'm looking forward to hearing from readers what they thought.
Yeah.
And we're reading it to our 10-year-old right now. Idzazi has a lot of questions for me in the morning when they've had time to think about it. So that's part one. And then the other book is Wheetago War, ROTH, which is a beautiful graphic novel with Christopher Shy. And I wanted to work with Christopher for 15 years.
Wow.
Before I ever had a chance to show him the trilogy.
Yeah.
So book one is out. We're over the moon. I mean, it's over 180 pages.
I'm dying for the second and third now because
So
back on that cliffhanger of like, oh my God, how are they going to live?
How are they ever going to get out of this one? So books 2 and 3 we're working on right now.
Sure.
And my publisher's coming in, Alexander Finbo, Renegade Arts Entertainment is actually driving in. We're going to go for supper before the big show tonight here at the library in Calgary. And we are going to sit down and we're going to have a serious adult conversation about books 2 and 3 because the beauty of Wheetago War ROTH is Christopher Shy, who's a master artist, has actually worked with real northern models and actors. So we have the former chief of the Salt River First Nations, Henry Beaver, who is the model for Glenn. He is the elder. And we have David Burke from The Revenant.
Yep.
We have Dwight Moses from our movie Three Feathers, and we have Joel Evans who plays Larry in The Lesser Blessed. So we actually used real Northerners as models for the graphic novel, and then we were lucky enough to work with Mila Antoine and her son Oz from Fort Simpson, and Mila was in The Revenant. She's the chief's daughter, and we're so excited to work with real Northerners for book 1, certainly for books 2 and book 3. And book 3 will be called, tentatively it's called All Out War. And that's where you get to see the Wheetago taking the planet probably 2 lifetimes from now. And then there's a being named Dove. And Dove is the beginning of the resistance. I can't wait. It's all out war.
Oh my gosh. So it's funny you should talk about generations because when I was reading it, the graphics are amazing, first and foremost.
Thank you.
And you can tell, like, oh, those are natives. It kind of looks like. And I was thinking more, some of the folks that I've seen from north of 60. So for me, I was like, hey, this really does look like our people as well. And there were things that were said, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. So I love the teachings that come out through your books.
Thank you.
I love that. But I wanted to tell people, my family loves watching Supernatural. Like, they'll literally watch all 13 seasons, like, over and over and over. And we have our favorite episodes, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the flavor I got from this, is like, this is intergenerational, and that, this is a short period of time. And I know that in the book, like, you kind of have some jailbirds together that are together. And I'm like, but they're really like Dene and I was like, they're the Winchester brothers, really. So, like, that kind of that flavor of it. And only, obviously, you know, everybody knows what they're up against, but because it's Indigenous, and there's like that trying to find the soul of the one that's in the book. I'm like, oh my god, like this is amazing. So I loved the teachings in both books first and foremost, and then like just the feeling of them. Like I can't wait for the second book.
Thank
I
you.
can't wait for the
Thank
third
you.
book. And with Beast, like yeah, I want it. I want more from that too.
Oh, bless
Actually,
you.
I do because like there's you know, what's next for the next generations because of what they just went through, and kind of back to that. You know, you go through this and then you tell the next generation and they tell the next generation, but then a generation's like, I don't know, until that happens again, right?
Yeah.
Or something where they realize like, no, this is real, this is who I am, this is a part of me. And I loved all of it. I love Sherry.
Thank
I
you.
love that
Sherry
she could,
Burns.
yeah,
Métis and psychic.
right,
Sea
and
spirits.
100%. And I love the way she kind of had to shelter herself because she would know something's happening, save the day in one case, but then everybody would be like, yeah, but she's kind of weird, and we don't know if she, you know. So she had to kind of stay home now. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense because you know, racial battle fatigue, whatever, right? You have a strong feeling about something, you say something, and then people are like kind of weirded out by that. So I just think it's awesome.
Thank
Like
you.
both books, I wanted both books even. I want to see like a sequel to both of them, but I know that there is one in the works for the Wheetago Wars.
Two more.
Yeah, I'm
more.
super excited.
So let's talk about Wheetago War. So when I came into your house, Michelle, I gifted you and your family some rat root, and this is one of our most powerful medicines. It's what we call one of our boss medicines, and this is the root that the muskrat love.
Yeah.
You can smudge with it. When you feel a tickle in your throat, you can take a little bite, and of course you pay the land when you receive some. But Wheetago War ROTH is about a man named Ross, and he's also known as the Child Finder, and he has single-handedly returned over 500 missing children to their families. So people in Canada know who he is. And what the background of Wheetago War ROTH is big industry in northern Alberta has been digging up different parts of land, and unfortunately there was a part of Alberta they were told never to dig up. They didn't listen. They dig up the earth, and unfortunately they dig up Wheetago bones. And because they do that, this one Wheetago is able to pull itself back together and call other Wheetago back. But what makes Wheetago War ROTH, and there is snow on the ground outside, so we're allowed to talk about this. So there was a great Saulteaux Dene elder named George Blondin who came to visit our class in 1991, and he wrote When the World Was New. He's your family? Well, he came, he was only supposed to speak to our native management class for 30 minutes. He stayed for 3 hours.
Yes.
And it changed my life forever. Because his book, Yamaraya, When the World Was New, those were out, and he, in 3 hours, gave me more than my K through 12 Fort Smith Northwest Territories, because he talked about our lawmakers, Yamaraya, Yamaja. He talked about the Na'acho, the giant cannibalistic animals that used to rule the land when the world was new, and they used to eat people, and they were giants, so giant bats, giant beaver, giant bear, giant wolverines, and it was Yamaraya and Yamaja who sat the animals down and said, this is not the way it's supposed to be. We're going to shrink you down. You're not to hunt the people anymore. We're going to have a change of things, and if you don't listen, we will kill you. And there were several animals who didn't listen, and they were killed. But I think that as a writer, the two most important words we have are what if. I remember thinking, well, what if some of the Na'acho got away as giants? And what if in Wheetago War ROTH, the ones that got away, the Wheetago called back? And that's the bear that you see. That's one of them.
Yeah.
And trust me, there's more that the Wheetago. So what I love about Wheetago War ROTH is we're taking the Wheetago War narrative, but we're infusing it with Dene knowledge, Dene truths. And so not only can they call themselves back, they can call others, and they can call the Na'acho back. So you'll see that's why I acknowledge George Blondin in the back.
Yeah,
So
I did, and I was going to ask you, and now you said it, and I'm like so excited to hear that.
So
go ahead.
no, but if I don't do this now, I'm going to forget.
Yeah.
So when Ross is bit by a Wheetago,
Yes.
he's holding rat root, and because he's holding one of our boss medicines, he doesn't turn all the way. The reason it's called Wheetago or Roth is Ross's Wheetago name. That's what the Roth know him as. But he's only half, so he's turned. He has their power, but he knows what they want. And as long as he doesn't let go of this, he still has a shred of humanity left. And the worry is that if he drops it, he'll eat everybody. So what I also love is the trajectory of the story where Roth is half turned.
Yeah.
He meets 4 escaped prisoners who are still handcuffed.
Yep.
They've survived a Wheetago attack, and they have to form a treaty. And the treaty is, you can't eat us. You need to break our handcuffs. We will go into Edmonton and get your wife and daughter and bring them back, because you can't go into Edmonton looking like that. So while that is happening, a mother, played by Mila Antoine, and her son Oz from Fort Simpson, they show up, but she has a pistol and 3 shells.
Yes.
So they have to form a treaty,
Yes.
and the boy can hear Ross's thoughts. That's what I love. Father to father, father to son, father to child.
Yeah.
Ross knows that this guy is a good
Is
person.
safe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're safe.
Yeah,
And
and I when he could, I'm like, oh my God, child. And I understood the mom being so like protective of their child, and I actually really felt bad for her, and I don't want to give out the ending, but I was like really betrayed in the end too, with her character, and I'm like, so like you talk about treaty, and one of the things I love about that too is that in both books talking about treaty with each other is that like no matter how many times I tried to tell settlers, no, we had treaties with each other. And I usually use Darcy Lindbergh. He's a lawyer up in Edmonton. He has a great video talking about Wetaskiwin, where peace was made between Blackfoot and the Cree. And like I show that one to be like, see, we had treaty. And he speaks so eloquently, and of course he's like, and I'm not, of course, and I acknowledge all my elders, and he does that right in there, right? And I think it's important, because I think it's important settlers see how much we value our elders, just as they would value, Ralph Klein or somebody else who might be in the room. So anyway, I love that you're constantly teaching that, because even for me trying to teach my daughter, like, yeah, the settlers broke the treaty, but our people, we respect the treaty, and try to talk about it like that with her. So I love it. It was interesting. The other day I was at WordFest, and Stephen Graham Jones, he talked about how much, and David David Abe Robertson, they were together talking about how you can tell so many truths through fiction. And that's what I love the most about reading your books, was that like, I know that's real, that's real, that's real, that's real, even though it's a fictional book and such. So like, that's what I loved about them both.
Massicho.
Yeah.
Well, I was really lucky. Before Mr. Blondin passed away, he asked me if I would be his editor for the last book he was ever going to write. And of course I said yes. So the last book Mr. Blondin ever wrote, it's called Trail of the Spirit, Mysteries of Medicine Power Revealed. And it took him 12 years. It was 500 pages handwritten about medicine power.
Wow.
And Lee Selleck and a bunch of wonderful people would take sections of the book and type it out.
Yep.
And it's published by New West Press. And I just wanted to acknowledge George Blondin, because he broke trail for so many of us Dene as writers and as storytellers. And I wouldn't be doing what I am doing today as a storyteller or as a writer had it not been for him, and Stephen King as well. So as a dad of a beautiful 10-year-old, what I love to do is I always think, well, do the new generation of Chipewyan and Tlicho, do they still know we're not allowed to raise our voices? Do they know we're not supposed to raise our hands against each other because of the peace treaty? And that's why, part of the reason I wrote Beast. And when I think about Wheetago War, Roth, and also the teaching of offering fireweed instead of tobacco. Right? That is an option too as a Dene. But also, to acknowledge George Blondin, I hope that in the future someone would say, I wonder why Richard Van Camp acknowledges George Blondin. Who was George Blondin? I better read up on this person, this elder. And then for them to read George Blunden's books and go, oh, that's where Richard learned about Yamazja and Yamoria and the Na'acho. My goodness, isn't that amazing that those teachings in 1991 in a 3-hour, it wasn't a lecture, it was he gave everybody a PhD in Dene. I just remember looking around going, are we not the luckiest people in the world? Like, I think he was looking for the right people at the right time to share everything he could. And that's where he taught us about Aya. He shared with us the prophet Aya, who foresaw the detonation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Aya passed in 1940. It was either 1940 or 1941. George was at his funeral. Wow. And then, the entire time that Aya was growing up, he had the same nightmare. And do you know the story of Aya?
No, I learned about it through here. I wanted to talk about this nuclear stuff with you only because, I've read about the Satu Dene and basically being tricked by the Canadian government for mining the uranium
and the American
then
government.
dying, and the American government.
Military.
And I know that the Navajo were negatively impacted by all of those tests that were being done without their consent and not understanding them dying of these cancers. But our men died mining the uranium, and then our Dene went over to Japan and apologized for the misuse of that uranium on behalf of our people. So that's one of the teachings I've always thought was so important to teach my daughter, that every August 6th, this is a really important time for you as a Dene to remember your people, remember the sacrifice, the mistakes that the Canadian government did along with the U.S. Army, and the murder of all of these Japanese. And I've always felt very strongly against nuclear as a result of that. And recently came across some doctors. It's called Science Up First. And there was the one woman who is absolutely against nuclear as well, because of, especially out east where they have nuclear reactors, always down from them are Indigenous dying of cancers, right? Kind of like what our CHIP are dealing with up here in Alberta. And so, and I've always told people, we have abandoned wells, we have abandoned pipelines, we have the mining that up north, the tailings ponds, they have no record of treating people and treating the end result in a good way. Of course I don't trust them with nuclear. And so finally, this scientist who has this, it's an ethical justice science group, a national one. She's like, yeah, we had a lot of debates. We're not for nuclear because we aren't responsible enough with it in the end. And so I'm like, thank God. So nuclear has been one of those political moments where I'm really against that, but I'm the only person in the room, and I have to basically say what I just said to you, and in order for people to be like, yeah, but the science, and then they still want to move ahead, and I'm sure there's a lot of money involved in there somewhere too.
They want to move ahead, but not in their community.
Yeah, exactly,
not
right?
in their backyard,
yeah,
right? So I'll just share with you what George Blunden shared with us in 1991. He talked about the prophets that were in Dene, and he mentioned Aya from, Dene, and he said that a long time ago there was a boy who was born in Dene, also known as Fort Franklin, a long time ago, and what he saw would come true.
Yeah.
And the people really respected and trusted his visions. And Aya, throughout his entire life, had one nightmare, and it would come back, and he told everybody. It's been well documented. And he said, I have seen birds so powerful they never have to flap their wings. And I have seen white people and Dene people going into our earth and taking out black eggs. Oh. And I've seen Dene and white people putting black eggs in the bellies of these birds. And I've seen two birds fly and follow the sun to where the sun goes at night. And I've seen these two birds fly over people who look just like us, the Dene people. And I've seen two eggs drop. I've seen a fire so bright it leaves only their shadows on what's left of their homes. Yeah. We must never help the white people when they come north looking for the black eggs in our earth. And he saw that continuously through his life.
Wow.
And he passed 1940 or 1941, and then in 1945, of course, there was the detonation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
And so he passed 4 years before his worst nightmare came true. And the message is we didn't listen. We didn't listen to our own prophet. Because we heard money, money, money.
Yeah.
Jobs, jobs, jobs.
Yeah.
Money, money, money. Jobs, 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 right? So.
And that's the power of the beast.
Power of the beast.
That's the power of the beast, because it's like, it's the same thing. Where it's like, you guys still dug it up because all you cared about was jobs and money, and now look it.
So that's the Wheetago,
Yeah.
right? So they dug up the Wheetago, even though they said they would never go into that place. They didn't let, the shareholders kept pushing them. The money was too good. Money was too sweet.
Yes.
So so I wanted to just honor George Blondin, and I'm really grateful to my publishers. You know, Wheetago War, ROTH is published by Alexander Finbow, Renegades Art Entertainment, who is in Canmore, Alberta, right here.
Yeah, I'm meeting him tonight.
Good, yes. Yeah. Well, I can't wait for you to meet him. And I feel that, you know, I've wanted to work with Alexander Finbow for years because growing up in Fort Smith, I loved Heavy Metal Magazine. And it just seems that anything that Alexander publishes now, it's like, I feel like he's the new Heavy Metal Magazine. Like he publishes what speaks to his heart.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful I finally get to work with Christopher Shy.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for the stories. I can't wait to get to work editing books 2 and 3.
I can't wait either.
Yeah,
my aunt and uncles, so my mom is the oldest of all of my aunt and uncles. So a lot of my aunt and uncles, all they cared about was music. So, and my dad, that was all he cared about, actually. So they had a lot of commonalities that they were always like, you know, giving each other records and talking about the newest music and wanting to go to the newest band, all those things, right? Like my one auntie, we're honoring her on Thursday. She was one of the first Indigenous lawyers in Alberta. And she was that cool aunt, would always give me like a David Bowie concert t-shirt because she would always go because they always went to Edmonton.
Lucky.
I know, I was lucky. I am lucky. And so like I think about the power of music that, well, but going back to Beast, that's in Beast, and I just think of you know, like that's north, all the Dene up north really cared about all the new music from the 60s going forward, right? And so I think about that influence, and I really felt that. I feel that right now from you, actually, too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, you know, Fort Smith, probably like how you grew up in the 70s and 80s, you look back and we had good Rockin' Tonight with Stu Jeffrey.
Yeah.
We had Night Tracks. We had Much Music. You look at, you know, Degrassi Junior High. So what I loved about Fort Smith in the 70s and 80s is we had the best of the North with culture, elders, traditions, medicine power, all the good stuff, great gossip. We can two-step to anything in Fort Smith. Hickeys, right? Hickey, capital of Canada. But at the same time, we had the best of the South. Because we were watching, you know, we had Much Music and Cinemax and the new TNN and HBO. So the things that are part of the Criterion collection now, that was what we were watching when we were 10.
Gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
So we were watching Blue Velvet when we were 13, and then of course there was Jason and Freddy and Star Wars and Savage Sword of Conan and you know, Krull. I mean, the stuff that I just love now.
Yeah.
I just am so grateful that we had the best of the North, but we also had the best of pop culture.
Yep.
And then you could take what you wanted from both, and I think that's what I'm doing with my literature. Is I get to braid pop culture, Dene culture.
Yes.
What could be sweeter?
Oh, it's so fun. And that's what we talk about, contemporary natives, and I'm like, yeah, we should totally be doing that. There's no reason why you can't be, you know, toasting your toast in a toaster and not still talking about, you know, George Blondin and the teachings that we're supposed to live our lives by. Like why can't you do both? Like,
well, I think look at us. You know, you and I. You've got the most beautiful Yoda earrings. You're wearing your Darth Vader top.
Yep. Because I was born in 1977, the year Star Wars was released, and Jaws. So. And Jaws. Yeah.
The childhood ender. A lot of people never swam again after that.
I know.
They said, I'm good.
Even
at Pine Lake, they're like, I'm good. There's no sharks.
I've always had a fear of great white sharks. And I've actually, the more I learned about my Dene teachings, and by the way, that's another teaching I always give. Probably won't say it on the podcast. I'll say it after. But that bigger picture of like, there's a reason why you're supposed to fear water. But my husband and I, we like were scuba instructors because that was kind of the thing. Like I need to get over this, and we grew up in Sylvan Lake, so like I was always in the water. I was a sea cadet, so I got like my sailing badges, and you know, and then when we were scuba diving, they forced us to all have like boat operator licenses, so I got that too, and all those things. But like I knew that there was more that I'm supposed to be learning, and I knew my Dene teachings had them. And the more I learned from an elder up north in Cold Lake. Her name is Nancy, Grandma Nancy, and she gave me a teaching about water that I have taught my daughter. My daughter was there, thank goodness, so that they could hear it firsthand from Grandma Nancy. But that bigger picture that like we have to respect the water, and there's a reason for it. And the Calgary Folk Fest have always invited me back when they do their big blessing with an elder, and I do the blessing to the water because it matters, right? And Folk Fest is right on a little island, so we always want to make sure that's protected for the weekend. Even though they drink and do that stuff, like you can still ask the spirits for protection. So yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have you.
Well, I'm lucky that my elders took me and said that you need to know this, you need to do this. And I know lots of natives who are, you know, whether they're Cree or whichever. I had this one friend, wow, my mom used to annoy me. We traveled from one place to another. We had to stop at every water crossing where she would give thanks and tobacco. And I'm like, that's something one day you'll appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Michelle?
Yes. Thank you for coming on my podcast.
Masi Cho.
Masi.
This was a great visit.
Oh, vice
Thank
versa.
you.
Thank you.
Your hands are freezing. Thank you very much. I've never been more awake in my whole life.
Yeah, I know. I usually have a warm constitution, and then.
Well, you know what they say about people who with cold hands? They're millionaires. Hey? And you are. You know why? Because you're healthy.
Yes.
Yeah, health is wealth.
Yes.
You're doing what you were born to do. Like your family's healthy. Your home is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sun is shining. Actually, when I pulled up, the geese were flying, and the clouds parted. I could see the moon.
I seen that
Isn't
text
that
that you
beautiful?
seen the moon.
Saw the moon.
You know what? In our fire, or in the backyard, we always do a fire for full moons now because it's important to honor her.
Honor her, yeah.
Honor.
It's Zeza Wegati. I love the moon. I
Yes.
love the moon.
Well, and our people up north, especially midnight sun. Like I mean, like we're talking about being in the dark most of the winter, right? So like I don't understand the, you know, why you wouldn't love the stars, why you wouldn't love the moon, and why, like for me, I always think astronomy was what I probably should have done, but with the teachings of the elders.
I'm going to send you something when I get home.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was blessed to hang around a great Chippewan trapper, Archie Smith, who's still going strong, but he said a long time ago, the people never watch the stars, they watch the moon. Yeah, he said if you know how to read the moon will always tell you about the weather that's coming.
Wow.
And he broke it down. In fact, I can send you something. I don't know how your podcast works, but I will send you the video where he speaks for probably 2 minutes, and it's everything you need to know about how to read the moon with the clouds.
I'll share that
For
all
what's
over.
coming, yeah. Well, we have permission to share it, and he's one of those elders that's so funny without even trying. But, 60 years on the land in the bush.
Nice.
60 years. I mean, he spends more time in the bush and on the land than in town, and I think that's why he's so jolly. Yeah. So happy. He doesn't let anything stick. He's got places to be.
Oh, and most of my uncles and aunties are like that. Like, they just don't, it's no big deal, Michelle. I'm like, I think it's a big deal. And they're like, it's really not a big deal. You got to let it go. So they're the ones who try to teach me to, like, calm down.
Well, again, Masi Cho. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you.